And a lot of mothers would be afraid that if they didn't have some sort of medical supervision there, and that what happens if there's complications? What you do then? That's what like one of the main fears that mothers would have about having an unassisted birth. What is your maybe experience or your perceptions on that?
Well, I think, yes, it's true. If you truly have a life-threatening, emergency, if something truly goes wrong, you don't have someone there. What you have to do, though, is you have to really weigh that against, if you have someone there, say a midwife, a doctor, they have rules and regulations that they are almost always required to follow. I personally believe that these rules and regulations are more dangerous than simply trusting yourself.
Right.
These people are not just, yeah, we'll be here if you need us, go ahead and let your body give birth. They're timing you, they're measuring you, every birth is divided into these different stages. It's just like pregnancy. People talk about, I'm in my first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. Everything is compartmentalized, when it really is just, it's one smooth process. The birth doesn't have to be divided into these different phases and a number put on this, and then every woman has to be 10 centimeters dilated, and then once she's 10 centimeters dilated, then she has to push. There's all kinds of rules that I believe are not based on true science, and they are, and this is what a midwife or doctor most likely will bring to your birth. So yes, they may help you if a complication occurs. They very well may, and often do, cause the complication, because even if you are calm and you're not triggering fight flight, the other two reasons why birth can be problematic are outside intervention and poverty. Certainly, and this is something that I cover in my book too, that, if you're living in poverty, you're starving to death, you don't have clean water and adequate food, yeah, you're going to have problems. But also, if you have the healthiest diet in the world and you surround yourself with people that are continually interfering with you, even if all they do is observe. There's a French obstetrician, Michel Audant, who is very supportive of home birth and unassisted birth, and he actually wrote the foreword to the new edition of my book. And he says, basically, a woman needs to go off to another planet when she gives birth. She's sort of going into this altered state of consciousness. And it's pretty much like if you're making love, and he says, imagine that you're making love and the energy is flowing and everything is wonderful, and suddenly someone taps you on the shoulder and says, excuse me, what's your social security number? And so he said, what this does, and what happens in the hospital, is that the doctors and the midwives are bringing you out of your intuitive, creative, artistic mind, and they're bringing you into your rational, critical thinking mind. You're stimulating the neocortex, and that basically shuts off birth. It's just like interfering with sex. Somebody knocks on your door, tells you you're getting audited. It's like, and the trauma, but even somebody just observing you, even if they say, well, I'm just going to watch you and I'm not going to interfere. Well, birth is a sexual act. It involves the same organs and hormones as sex. And how would you feel if you're having sex and someone is watching? And I'm just going to watch you, and my presence won't interfere. Well, it does interfere, and women in labor are very sensitive. So I think when you think about, whether, okay, if something goes wrong and no one's there, but I've read too many stories of something going wrong because someone is there. So for me personally, I felt safer trusting my body, and rather than bringing in somebody that I felt I was not going to be comfortable having somebody there. I felt it was going to be a problem for me. If someone is more comfortable having someone there, then maybe that they should do that. But I think then if they truly delve into that and say, well, why would I feel comfortable having someone there? Then they'll realize, oh, well, because I'm afraid. So the other thing about complications is that I think you really need to examine what is a complication. Because to me, so many things that are defined as complications in childbirth and are treated as complications are just normal variations. That say, my second baby was a footling breech, so he came out feet first. I wasn't expecting that. Now in the hospital, I never would have been allowed to get to that point. They would have cut me open before I even, probably I wouldn't have even gone into labor. If I had, they would have done a C-section.
Yeah.
So, but I gave birth to him very easily. It was a 2-hour labor. I just moved out of the way. I caught him myself, and I just, his feet started coming out. There wasn't the pressure from the head, which I'd felt with my first birth.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, my first birth was a face presentation, which they will sometimes do a C-section for. He came out face first rather than the back of his head. So. Yeah. Was, so that could also be considered a complication, yet he came out easily. Footling breech came out easily. Next baby, posterior. She was facing my front rather than facing my back. Another reason, someone told me today about a friend of mine, they had to have a C-section, baby was posterior. I'm like, oh God, I had a posterior baby. They didn't have to do that, So I think we need to re-examine what is a complication. And I think so much of the time, if we don't panic, because if you panic when you see, this is a complication, and you panic, bang, you've just shut off the flow of blood and oxygen to the uterus. Then, so if you're in the hospital and they say, your baby's in distress, we can see your baby's in distress. Well, what are they doing? Did they just tell you that your baby is in the wrong position, or did something happened that caused you to panic? Yes, then you shut off the flow of blood and oxygen to your baby, and yes, your baby's in distress. What's the solution? Cut you open or help you calm down to get that blood flowing again? But I think, the complication issue, it's just something that each person has to weigh for themselves and see what feels comfortable to them.
Yeah.